Excellent.
Looks like it's
You
on.
want me to see if I'm on, if you're on?
I think it's good.
Okay.
But you know how technology is.
You're on.
Definitely has been hit or miss, that's for sure.
Welcome, everyone, to this meeting of the Durham Capital Improvement Committee. And tonight, we're tasked, this is our third meeting for the '24 budget process, the CIP portion of the budget process. And tonight, we're tasked with coming up a set of recommendations for the selectmen, our rankings to move forward to them. At this point in the process, we've been presented with the department applications and also their replacement schedules. And we've all heard from the department heads, and we've gone off and scored each project according to a set of criteria in the policy. And then Michelle very kindly collated those scores and ranked the projects according to their scores. So tonight, as I mentioned, we're tasked with coming up with a set of recommendations. And I thought we might start by going down the project list and talking about whether we think the projects are in the right ranking. If we agree with the ranking, and whether there are any comments on the rankings. And then finally, we'll vote on whether to send that list onto the select. Is that, that's pretty much the way we've done it in the past, I'd say. Does that sound good to everyone?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah? All right, sounds good. Well, why don't we kick it off with number one, or actually, Michelle, if you'd like to go through the list you created.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You want me to explain it or just go through the
No,
ranking?
no, no. Yeah, you just introduce them, yeah.
Yep.
You might wanna get your microphone really close since you're
Okay.
wearing a mask.
All right, so we had, the first one was for the fire department, the CAD dispatch. This,
Well,
what- oh,
let's
sorry.
talk about that, about the
Mhm.
first one. We could
Okay.
go through them one by one. So that seemed to rank, really, I think almost no surprises there.
Mhm.
Is my impression, that seemed to rank universally high,
Mhm.
or to score universally high.
Yep, so it looked like, so I did include all our individual scores on one of those sheets.
Thank you.
We all had, so there were 4 of us had them in first and 1 person had it in third.
Right.
So it was,
Yeah.
like you said, definitely top of the list.
Uh-huh, okay. Does everyone feel comfortable with it, at least for the moment, in that position?
I do.
Yeah, okay. And, I don't know what everyone's thoughts were there, but I know what I took away from that project was that the communication during these incidents is really important. And I know I listened to a good portion of the EMS scanner communication related to the mass shooting incident in Lewiston. And, you really got a sense of that, and how important it is for everyone to know what's going on while these incidents are taking place. So, any other comments or thoughts?
Can I just ask a learning question?
Sure.
So some of the numbers are kind of standing out to me, and if this is inappropriate to ask them, don't answer by any means. But like Paul, you ranked it as ones on the social,
Yeah.
versus some of the other people ranked it higher, or even put in zeros at times, which I debated, can you do a 0 or not, sometimes I put an NA. So, I just wanna make sure I'm interpreting things correctly too when I'm doing my assessment.
It's a great question, and I think how we've handled it in the past and how we've discussed it in the past, that the important thing is individual consistency.
Okay,
So that, because everybody has a little bit of their own method,
okay,
and the criteria are open to a lot of interpretation,
okay,
as well as, you know, how they match the project. There's so much interpretation. You know, I kind of look at this in a way, and we've talked about this in the past, a little bit about like the kind of matrix you might use in a corporate job interview process. You know, you go through the matrix and, you know, you might score your candidates, but you also think about the interview, you know. You think about the interview and what, you know, what you took away from that candidate. And in terms of the fit and all those things. And, you know, I see some similarities there. I don't know if that
Okay.
resonates for you at all. But, you know, the scoring is important, but at the end of the day, it has to make sense to us.
Mhm.
That's the bottom line.
Mhm.
So, but to answer your question directly, as long as you're consistent with regard to, you know, if you gave a project a 0 on the social end, you know, for whatever reason, as long as you apply that on other projects that you think are similar, if you apply the
Okay.
scoring a similar
Okay.
way.
Because I was trying to make sure I was doing it very logical, not emotional,
Yeah.
so
Yeah, it's hard.
taking
Mhm.
myself out
It's
of
not-
it, trying
yeah.
to literally,
Yeah.
so, okay.
Okay, all right, so then, okay, Michelle, what's next?
Yep, and so then we had the second one, was assessing,
Okay?
came in a little below the dispatch.
Assessing, okay. So
So that was
assessing, we had a 1, 3
Mhm.
2s, and a 3. Is that right? Yes.
Yep,
Yeah,
so that makes sense, I
it
think.
seems to be in the ballpark, and of course, you know, we all know, and we've been hearing for years,
Mm.
that our assessment ratio is low and it keeps getting lower. And and we've fallen now behind, I guess, where we're required to be by the state. And it's been, how long since a reval?
15 years?
Yeah, it's been almost 15,
2009, wait a minute, no, 2009 or
Yeah.
something?
yeah.
Yeah, it's been a long
And
time.
the certified ratio is at 67%.
What is that
67%.
ratio based on? What's the numerator or denominator? Like, is it like
So you
percent?
want to
Like-
be between 70 and 110.
Yeah, but what's the 70 and 110% of?
100% is like real value.
Yeah.
I don't
100%
know
of
who's
the value.
determining, I guess.
Well, that's my question, is the fact that
determining
like, but so how do you know what the real value is when the
Yeah.
assessment, we have an assessment
It's a
and
good
then there's the
question.
real value, so what's
Yeah,
the real
yeah,
value
yeah.
based off of?
the- You know, I.
It's the sales
always-
of home, isn't it?
So is it like based off of sales data?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so low, is because during the pandemic, people were selling their houses for much more than they would.
Right,
I mean, they
yeah.
just skyrocketed, and that really hurts.
It's been going wild,
Yeah.
real estate
Right,
market, yeah.
Yeah, which everybody's gonna have a problem with pretty soon, especially when they do the reevaluations, is, you know, how do you balance what the market's done compared to, you know, people's tax bills
Right.
and the mill rate, and the comparison of each is all the towns, they had expressed when we went to one of our seminars recently, that it's gonna be a big problem
Mhm.
here coming up when all these towns do their reeval.
Which in theory, if you're adjusting, if the whole, like, tax base stays the same, you just adjust the mill rate, so there's
Right.
some people that are
Yeah.
gonna go up and some that are gonna go down.
Right,
So-
right.
But in theory, it shouldn't be a huge issue, but,
Right, in-
but
right,
if,
in
if we
theory,
keep, if we
right.
keep our tax base the same, but.
Yeah, exactly, yeah, that's what's gonna be
Yeah,
an interesting thing.
yep. Yeah, it's about equity. It's
Yeah.
about trying to make it equitable.
And what the town receives for money as a result of that valuation.
Right. But it doesn't change the town's total, you know, total assessment
No.
for what it needs each year. It just gets divided among the taxpayers typically. Yeah. Okay, so, Yeah, so that one makes sense to people? Number two, assessment. I like seeing it up there, because it's, you know, it's coming, it's gotta get done.
Yeah, just one more comment. Who's the, John, who's the chair of the planning board? John Talbot, yeah. So he came in the other day and just briefly said, I think it was Poland, just went out for RFP through their town, and it was over $400,000.
You see,
Wow.
that number seems low to me, that, what was it, 180? Is that the number? that
Right.
they're carrying?
Right, ours
Yeah.
should be a little bit lower, there's more, population's higher in Poland, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
might,
yeah.
it might be, it could be. I mean, things have really gone out of whack, so it's hard to know. And Donna was just throwing it, so
Uh-huh.
it might be low. I mean, but we're working on the RFP. We're gonna put it out, and then we'll know. And there was only one bidder, and they can't do it until 2027. So that's what we're looking at for Poland.
For Poland. I'm trying to remember the name of the company, and I know this, I'm just kicking myself, I can't recall, who does the tax maps for the town. O'Donnell. It's O'Donnell.
Yeah, but what are they under, Spatial Alternatives?
Maybe, but, or I don't know, but
Yeah.
O'Donnell and Associates does a lot of these.
Yeah.
They're right next door in New Gloucester,
Yeah.
and they do a lot of towns this size. They might be worth just checking in with, you know. I have no idea, you know, where they land compared to other
Right.
companies. But they might be one to, they probably have a pretty good sense for what it's worth. Okay, so, moving on to the next one.
So
Michelle.
the third one was Public Works Capital Fund. So the top two were pretty close in scoring, and then we dropped a little bit down from 660 to 581 for the capital fund. And how did that
Okay.
rank? And that one was a little bit skewed on how
Yeah.
we,
Yep.
we had some high, some low, some middle.
So, yeah, thoughts on that one?
For me, both, and I look at the reserves, I ranked them exactly the same, and essentially a 5s across the board, because I don't look at it as, I'm not looking at the equipment list and as far as what might come up when, it's essentially like each department has a capital need list, and assuming that they know what that they need, it's a matter of funding the reserve, and so it applies to everybody in the community, so it was just kind of across the board, so both of them ranked the same.
Yeah.
I didn't try to manage like where they fell within the ranking, it was just kind of 5s across the board.
Yeah.
So that was my methodology.
Okay.
I think I always struggle with it a little bit, and I think we talked about it last year. I don't know, it's hard. In my mind, it just seems like it's something we should do always. Like we talked about at the last meeting, that we're gonna have these items to purchase constantly over the next several years, and if we're not reserving for it, it just seems like it should be
Yeah.
something we just do. So sometimes it feels like it's hard to rank with some of the items that seem like more of a necessity now. I don't know, it just seems
Yeah.
like it should be part of the regular budget that we just set aside money to fund the reserve, so I just
Yeah.
struggle every time I have to rank our reserves.
How about you, Joe? What are your thoughts?
Again, I looked at it, not thinking about it in general, but more literally line by line, where I thought it landed, like in the comprehensive plan, or,
Okay.
you know,
Sure.
and even like health and safety. It didn't rank high for me in health and safety because, I didn't interpret it as like saving community members or safety for community members, like clean water might be, or something like that. Whereas perhaps you could interpret it, it's safety for the employees. I did take that into consideration when it was specific items that came up, whether it would make the employee's job safer or not. But that's how, you know, I, again, just tried to, you know, look at it logically, line by line, you know, community need, I thought it was high, because if we don't help the community plan for it now, then it's definitely gonna be a hard impact to them later. So,
Thanks. I heard Joe mention an idea, I think it was at the last meeting, and it was just a sidebar discussion we had. And I thought it was a good idea, and, you know, we've talked, Jill and Peter, for the last couple of years about how, you know, the capital fund is really important. It's really important that we start saving, especially now that bonding projects are so expensive, the bonds are so expensive. And one of the challenges is that the capital fund never ranks that high because the criteria is really kind of more designed for projects. And so Joe had the idea of, or I heard him say the idea, and I'm sure he can talk about it better than I can, but this idea of maybe we should think about pulling the capital funds out of the ranking and just giving them, you know, letting them stand on their own and recognizing their importance and give them separately to the selectmen.
Right, so for these, like for these, these replenishment of the for the schedule of the equipment we need, it's
Yeah.
almost like you know, back to the level loading it that we talked about in the last meeting, of fire department equipment and, public works equipment that you just know you're gonna need.
No, you're gonna need
You know,
it.
it's not really a matter of ranking it,
Yeah.
it's needed. And it's our infrastructure that we're upgrading, so, you know,
Yeah.
putting that forth as an item every year, that whatever the number comes out to be, when you level load the budget for these equipments,
Yeah.
you know, putting that out as a separate item and not go through this ranking process might make more sense.
And I think
You know,
that
it's
kind
an
of.
idea, but it may not go right away, but it's something we should think about in the
Yeah,
future.
yeah, and I think that might better reflect the idea Jerry has been going with the
Yeah.
finance person.
yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah.
especially once Mark has all the financing figured out and all the pieces of the puzzle put in,
Right.
Yeah.
then I think the town will understand it as well, and making it its own entity.
Right. It seems like we're heading that way, and it probably makes more sense from a budgetary standpoint for the town to look at it in that
Mhm.
manner moving forward.
Yeah,
And then you're not going back and forth. It's not being compared to, say, other budget items at that point. It's just cost of doing business, cost of running the town, right?
And in a short period of time, all of these CIP items will come out of the reserve fund.
Yeah,
So it won't even
exactly.
be part of affecting the taxes or how much
yeah.
money we're raising, because we set the money aside, and so it's just a matter of how do we wanna spend our savings.
So it seems like eventually it needs to come out anyway. It's gonna need to come out anyway. In terms of if, you know, we go this direction.
Right, if you level funded each year, it's coming
Correct.
out each year.
It's,
right?
right, exactly,
Yeah.
yeah.
And-
So it's kind of a step, you know, a small step, but kind of go in that direction.
You know, and that's gonna be the first iteration of the budget to see what it looks like.
Yeah,
That's what,
yeah,
that's what we're planning on doing.
yeah. So does that make sense to you, Jerry?
Yes, absolutely.
Uh-huh. Okay. Does it make sense to everyone else? I saw a lot of nods. All right, excellent.
So we're
Great.
taking it out this year?
Yeah, let's take it out. Do we rank them both together, or do we prioritize one over the other?
To me, they're-
Or do we take the ranking that is there, which is basically Public Works Capital Fund and Fire Department Reserve?
I think the only, I guess my knee-jerk thought is whichever one is on the warrant articles first is, I don't know if it'll get the most scrutiny or the most support, you know, so. I'm not sure necessarily
Well,
ranking it means,
well,
leads to anything.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, here's the thing. is it does from the perspective of like the admin, Jerry, and the selectmen and the budget committee, they haven't done their budget yet. So they don't know yet, like, where things are gonna stand,
But if
in
it's
terms
supposed
of
to
admin.
be, oops, sorry.
So, if they do this, you know, if they get to CIP after the budget's done and look at CIP, and they only have a fixed amount of money, then they could say, for example, okay, well, this year, that reserve request isn't even gonna make it to the warrant. They could, you know, they have the ability to say that. Will they? I'd say it's pretty unlikely, because, pretty much in past years, I've always seen both reserve requests on the warrant. So, I mean, I'm fine with just putting them both on there
Yeah.
and not ranking them. Yeah.
And I think not ranking them goes along with the philosophy that has been getting hinted at.
Yes.
And it's not a matter of if one goes on or the other one, you know, there's not really one is more important than the other. If capital funds are important to be raising for, then they're important to be raising for.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
um,
And it's kind of like, you know, you want it, both, you know, I find it interesting in the scoring, like, you know, both departments are so important, so critical to the town. It's not like we really want to emphasize one over the other. Yeah.
And
I,
just- Yeah, go ahead.
oh, no, I was gonna say, I found my biggest difference between the two reserves was, who was more realistic in their number.
That's a good point.
That's the only reason why one got ranked lower is because
Yeah.
they were further away from the comprehensive plan that says you need to be saving money.
Uh-huh, yeah, good point. Yeah.
So, keep in mind too, if the level funding works and that's the direction we go in, and so
Uh-huh.
you're funding the reserves anyway, then the questions are like, okay, do you really need that truck this year?
Yeah,
And then if you don't, you've still funded it, so it gives you that flexibility to maybe put it off a little bit,
yeah,
something, you know, now you need it the next year. You know,
Yeah.
so,
build that balance.
right,
Yeah.
so that gives you, you know, it's really about being flexible while trying to keep the residents' taxes at, you know, as flat as possible as we go. So
Yeah.
it's actually better, because now you aren't ranking them and having to buy it necessarily that year. And it gives a chance for the actual vehicles to be vetted even better, I believe.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly,
just because it's 10 years old doesn't mean you need to buy it.
right.
But you know they ain't gonna last much longer than that, so,
When we, I think it was our first year, it might have been our first or second year, we did the CIP. We held our meetings over at the Public Works Building.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, I think Calvin was asking for a bed, for a truck bed. And he took us out to the garage, you know, and he showed us, you know, like the shape of this bed.
Yeah.
You know, this thing had like patches all over it, you know, and cracks, and that, you know, you really got a sense of it. And,
The sanding unit, I think it just fallen off at. just-
exactly. Yeah. And, you know, maybe at some point, I agree, I think that piece is still important, you know, the ranking and just not automatically saying, building the balance, and not automatically saying just because the standards, oh, yeah, you're right. But maybe at some point in the future, you and, or the selectmen or whoever, or this committee gets opportunities to take a look at some of this stuff. Like, for example, that equipment trailer, like, you know, I'm just like, how bad is that equipment trailer? It's like, I'm wondering. So anyway, okay, great. Sounds like we're all on one page, and good idea, Joe. Okay, so where does that take us?
So the next one, the land use codification.
Okay? Land use codification, all right. Thoughts?
That one was sort of all over the place too, some high, low, in the middle. I mean, a lot of the scoring tended to be that way, except for the first few. We just had a mix of opinions.
Mhm. Well, I'm not hearing a lot of comments, so,
Well, I was
Yeah.
actually just smiling, because when it came to the economics, I ranked it high.
oh, yeah, okay.
And, I ranked it high just because I thought that it would, how did I think the directly produce? I know when I thought about indirectly producing income, I thought it would because, we're not paying a lawyer to interpret what the ordinance is supposed to be saying.
Mhm.
We're not paying a code enforcer to take 16 hours to figure out what the codes are supposed to be saying, you know.
It's a good point. Yeah.
So I felt it definitely would be a moneymaker for the town. So that's probably one of the areas where it got a slightly higher bump from me compared to other people.
Mhm. Yep.
Because that's how I interpreted it. It was supposed to help streamline the codes
Yeah.
and make them make more sense, have less people trying to sue us or appeal decisions and things like that, which again takes time and money.
Yeah. I think for me, where it scored lower was that it didn't rank as high in terms of public safety. And then I struggled with this question of what's, when you start talking about contracts, there's part of me that always wants to know, well, what's the scope of work? Like, I really like to know, what is it that this contractor's gonna do? What are they gonna do? Are they, just gonna do the legal review? Are they gonna get into, for example, the back lot ordinance, which I'm sure needs like a lot of work? Or is it just gonna be on legal, and is it just going to be a set of recommendations? Or are they also going to suggest language?
All of the above.
So they're actually going to suggest specific changes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Like we had talked the other day, just in that one decision thing, there was ambiguity just in that one decision section. They're gonna look at that, and they probably look at that 7 days
Yeah.
and say, 7 calendar days, business days, what days?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't really lay it out, and in that particular case, we will look, if it was 7 calendar days,
It was. Well, we went 7 calendar.
right, we did. But we did, but did we have to really rush?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we didn't know, right? I mean,
Yeah,
the hearing was on Tuesday.
right.
Wednesday was the next day. You had Thursday as a holiday, Friday as a holiday, then 2 weekends. Do
Uh-huh.
you count them? And
Yeah.
is it expected that employees or volunteers are gonna work on Thanksgiving just to get a letter out? So it's those sort of things.
Sherry, where do you think it belongs in
Business
this
day.
rank, the codification?
Oh, I think it needs,
Where would you put it?
I would rank it pretty high.
So compared to, say, equipment trailer? I know it's hard.
It is, because it's two, like. it's
So
two-
different.
It's two different things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Did you do your own ranking?
No,
I
I don't
mean,
know.
in your mind, you must have something.
Well, yeah,
now
we
where-
was
Yeah,
actually, with
yeah.
me and the guys had a little bet going on and see how they were doing. So,
So-
we have to have some fun,
Right.
right?
Oh,
I was
so
gonna
you have a
say,
conflict of
where's the
interest.
cheat sheet?
Right.
You have a conflict of interest.
Where's this cheat sheet? How are they doing here?
So, but yeah.
I want in.
Yeah, it is, I mean, it is important because the language and some, we don't even know where it came from. We don't know if it come from some other ordinance and it just got pasted in ours and, they're gonna look at it all and go through it. And really, at the end of the contract period, he's gonna have a package that he's gonna hand over and say, this is where this needs work, which we'll give to George. But a lot of these changes can only happen at town meeting, but at least someone's done the punch list, and we can pick out the more serious ones.
Here's something I like about it,
Yeah.
and that is that it kind of takes a little bit, at least this, I don't think it addresses everything, but it does kind of take staff out of the firing line,
That's perfect, yes.
because, it's a third party,
Yeah,
and they're telling us that we need to do this.
right.
Is it is it an attorney or is it a land use consultant?
There are like legal scholars on the team, I know, rather they're like full-fledged attorneys, I don't know, but it's a
Uh-huh.
team that looks at it, the whole thing, and, you
Yeah.
know, the legal aspects, they probably have a legal scholar looking at that.
Have you guys looked at examples of what these guys are providing, like the deliverable? What they're
Just-
providing for a deliverable?
Just on their website, he just showed us what happens when they did in like 23 towns in the state, so they put it like up on their website, so on the town's website, you go to the land use ordinance, it goes to the company's website, and then there are other,
Oh, yeah.
you can look at other towns.
Monmouth, I think, does this.
Right, there's a
Yeah, yeah.
bunch.
There are a bunch of them, yeah.
Yeah, and so then you can actually look at some of those. as-
Auburn too, I think.
Right.
A lot of them.
You can look at towns that are similar to yours, I mean, we're a rural town, so
Yeah.
ordinances change from municipality to municipality. I mean, a lot of times they're the same because you gotta follow the law, right?
So if you did a Google search, you're saying that it's gonna direct?
No, so when you go to your homepage, the
Yeah.
town's homepage, and say, click on the land use,
Uh-huh.
it goes to the contractor's page, if that's the
Okay.
service we wanna get.
Uh-huh.
And then it's right there, and it's all laid right out, and they manage it in the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a follow-on from what we're talking about, a follow-on would be the company redoing the land use code as well. So this is just to have them go through and point out, like, here's where your conflicts are.
Right.
But then when you're talking, it sounds like they'd actually then rewrite the land use code as well.
We're not looking for that service.
Okay, but I didn't think so, but that's why, like, why would we link to, if they're just pointing out the conflicts in our current code, why would we link to?
So once we complete the land use code, and if that's the service they want to sort of maintain it, they would maintain it on.
They
Okay.
offer that.
Right,
but
they offer that.
That's not, that's
not
probably an
part of-
add-on.
Yeah,
so-
that would be
Okay.
an add-on if we
Yeah,
wanna go
yeah.
further. We just have to have somebody look at it to see how, I don't know what the right word is, how serious it is out of whack with
Yeah,
being, well, having a lot of ambiguity, doesn't
Uh-huh.
follow state law. Does it even, when it references another section of the land use, does that tie together?
yeah,
And there are some issues with it,
yeah.
especially if you're a code officer.
Oh, yeah. Spent a lot of your time on this. That's a really good point, which, was Joe's point with regard to efficiency. So one thing that I mentioned to Jerry was that, often ordinances, or really all the time, ordinances in small communities like this are a work in progress. And what's important is continually moving forward. That you have a dedicated group of people that are continually moving it forward and continuing to polish it. It's kind of an iterative process. But what concerns me is that I'm not sure we really have the capacity. I'm not sure we have the capacity to do that ourselves, or it doesn't seem like we're doing it. And maybe we're far enough behind that this really makes sense. Have you spoken with John Talbot and with the planning board about this at all?
Just not the planning board, but John Talbot knows, I mean, we've talked
Uh-huh.
about it in a select board meetings when I was bringing it up, that this is what we ought to look into doing,
Yeah.
so.
And did this company do this in Mechanic Falls?
I'm not sure if they did in
Okay.
Mechanic Falls. We only looked at this company to get, what does this really mean? So we would go out to an RFP.
Yeah.
So we just
Yeah.
needed to just find out, how does this work?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he came in and he talked to us and showed us how it worked, and,
Uh-huh.
and
Okay.
even George, the planner, is all about this, and this helps him out, because now he doesn't have to spend time, he doesn't have time to do the research,
Yeah.
period, he just doesn't have the time, so. Because he's 20 hours a week, and he's getting ready for the next town meeting with
Yeah.
ordinances that we're trying to develop now.
Yeah.
He's trying to put out fires from the ordinances that were passed last town meeting for people that are unhappy.
Yep.
So he's really busy, and so he can be the guy that kind of like looks at these changes, and maybe because they pointed him out, he doesn't spend time
Right.
doing that, now he can maybe make those changes and make them fit a little quicker.
Yeah, I think it kind of makes sense because one of the challenges is that, you know, if George just proposes these on his own, I think, you know, it may just be like an uphill battle. But if he's able to, you know, say directly, you know, we had a specialist look at these.
Right,
These don't, you know, aren't in alignment with state law. It makes it a lot easier. And, you know, I've seen it work where you have, like, if the planner is working with a committee, not doing it on their own, but working with a committee. But that's really time intensive.
it is.
It's really time intensive, so,
And there is
Yeah.
the possibility, if we wanna take it further and have this company do it, but they can redraft them,
yeah,
but that doesn't mean they go into law until it goes to town meeting.
yeah.
And then we have to decide, and then how much do we wanna take to town meeting too, you know, and how much of the people wanna absorb at town meeting if there's too many changes.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a way to do it so it all gets done, but I haven't had that conversation with them or how other towns have done that to actually get them passed at a town meeting form of government.
So how did
Town council governments, boom, right in the meeting, they can accept them, and it's all done in one meeting. But we don't have that form of government here. We have to wait each year to make little changes.
So how the ordinances work, there's dictated by state law, are there some by
Yeah.
federal law, and then things we can do ourselves? sort of a
State mostly, yeah, and there's some wiggle room within that. You can be sometimes, well, not some, you can be more restrictive than state law,
Sure.
but
okay.
not
Yeah,
less.
Yeah, that makes sense.
If we didn't have anything, then it would be
State
state
law,
law would
right.
apply just by virtue of you being in
Yeah.
the state. And
Okay.
then we become more restrictive usually is what towns do, or more
Hmm.
specialized depending on what the situation is in town
Yeah.
in regards to what we have going on. And you
Yeah.
specialize them as you move along.
Do we have a lot of our own restrictions?
We do have a lot of added restrictions in there and
Yes, you know, and you get to things that are very kind of like, you know, a little controversial, like backlot.
the
you know.
back lot
And-
has always been a controversial one.
And you try to satisfy a lot of people, a lot of different voices, and it can get really complex.
Yeah.
you
I
know.
found it confusing when we bought
Yeah.
our home and built it, so I get that one.
Yeah, yeah.
That was always a hot topic when we were on the planning board. Back
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
This was always a.
Yeah, backlots and dog barking. you know, that's-
Exactly, yes, it was.
Okay. So, Jerry, now the next one on the list is town office remodel. So I have to ask the question, you know, like town office remodel, I look at that and I just see that this has been talked about for a lot of years. And I'm worried about things like, you know, staff retention. And I think we finally have we're fortunate to finally have someone here who's willing to do something about it and on an affordable plan that seems to have some motivation and passion to get it done.
Well-
So, do you have any feeling with regard to, you know, where the two belong in terms of ranking?
Well, that,
I know that's a tough question.
yeah, well, we need to have more office space. We have 3 employees sharing a 10-by-10 office.
Yeah.
And it's not so much the employees, it's the code officer's permits, notes, plans, on top of the assessor's reports, and whatever she does, on top of the planner's ordinances. We can take a tour into the office and you can look at it, and you don't see a lot of desk space. All you see is papers everywhere, because you got 3 people sharing that office.
Yeah.
Prisoners have more space than that. So it's a and then you got
Yeah.
part-time employees sitting at a TV tray behind the glass when they're here 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So it is important to provide a good working environment,
Mm-hmm.
because if we don't, then that's an issue for staff. and staff will find a good working environment
Mhm.
if we don't provide one for them.
Yeah,
That's the
Yeah.
downside of it,
right, right.
you know?
Yeah, and we know what happens when that starts to fall apart.
Right,
It's not good.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and like you said, prior years, it seemed like it was a whole new construction and add-on to the building, and just, this seemed like a really good solution that was gonna be a lot easier.
or
That's
just
accomplishment.
like 10 grand to make a plan,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Like to hire someone, a
right.
consultant to come in and make a plan.
Well, so we have one from it's interesting to read back in 2006 what they said about this building. And 17 years later, it's worse,
Ah,
you
yeah,
know, so,
okay.
I mean, it might be
Yeah.
worth dusting that off, looking at it and saying, is this somewhere the town really wants to go? Because
Yeah.
you need
Mhm.
the space. You're growing, we're 4,200 now.
Yeah,
So back when that plan was written, you had a code officer, not full-time, you didn't have a planner.
yeah,
Now we do,
right, you
So-
didn't have COVID,
right? And this,
yeah,
if we was to try to, like, so, when the, reevaluation happens, that company has to come to this office and sit, because they gotta go look at the tax records, so you have to provide a space for them.
uh-huh,
I mean, we can provide this room, but
Yeah.
there's really no space for that. I mean, if there's no space, if we had to get an intern to help us with stuff.
yeah,
You know, whether it was digitizing a lot of the paper and get it into, look, where do we put them? We have no place to put anyone else.
yeah,
It does seem like putting a wall up here is just a Band-Aid.
It is.
You're now creating a temporary meeting space that really, I mean, the fire department is nice to let us have meetings there, but that raises a lot of questions for me, having meetings over there, and,
mhm.
you know, and it doesn't seem to me like that's a permanent plan.
It's not,
And that's really the technology piece is really important too, right?
yeah.
And being able to share those meetings.
Yeah, the technology piece over there, he's got half of it already. I mean, for $500, we can set up the streaming over there. That's really the easy part. But like Jill said, it is a Band-Aid, because we don't even have a good boardroom as it is, because you can't fit anyone in here, right? So it's grown. You can fit a little bit more over the fire station, you know, on a temporary basis. But the town office, town hall should really have a boardroom that works. So you can bring, so the select board and the budget committee, we meet during budget season. We can't meet in here, it's too crowded, so last year I think we did go to the Eureka Center, then one time we went to the fire station.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's just not enough room, I mean, so,
I see it as a little bit of a leap of faith with regard to, for example, the meeting spaces. You know, exactly how this is gonna work out. But, you know, I wonder how long we can kinda kick this down the road.
right. And it's an expensive can to kick, because back in 2006, the addition to this town office was about 600,000,
Uh,
17 years ago.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
probably,
You know, the interesting thing about those projects, I will say though, it's kind of like, well, you know, you have immediate needs. Those projects can take a long time to get off the ground,
Mhm.
but the beauty of them is, you know, you do it, you spend a lot of money, you know, you take out bonds. Like, I'm thinking about over in New Gloucester, that Public Works building, I forget where that ended up, but it was probably around 5 million. And, you know, once it's done, everybody's usually pretty darn happy that they got this. And the fact that this space is gonna be the home of the town for like many years to come.
there's a lot of pride there.
Yeah, it's a lot of pride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but you're right, it does take time. I mean, you really
Takes
have,
time.
it just takes time to get it off the ground.
It takes time.
It takes time to get buy-in
Uh-huh.
from people. You know, when you think about the roads, right? When the roads were terrible, you know, all the residents ride on that, they want those fixed. When you talk about adding a bunch of money to a town office that they visit once a year,
Yeah,
make, you know, a little tougher sell, right?
yeah.
But it's, you know,
Yeah.
it's a necessity when you're growing,
Yeah,
you know, we just don't have the space.
yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen the, like town of Harrison they're putting up a big public works building right now.
yeah,
And then they had done their town office over there, and they're a much smaller community than us. And it came out beautiful with the, you know, meeting room in the middle, and then, you know, different departments on either side of the meeting room where everybody kind of meets in the middle.
yeah,
And then they repurposed the town office as the library,
yeah.
you know, so it was a kind of progression through the town there.
These are really, you know, they're tough projects too, because it's not like you can go out and raise money for them.
Right.
No,
You know, nobody funds town offices. Nobody does.
there's no free money for that.
There's no free money for it, except maybe, like, you know, what was it, the ARPA or something, I don't know, that kind of thing. I'll just throw it out there, you know, and I know the numbers have landed where they are, but where do you guys think that this is the right order, land use codification and then town office remodel? Or should that be different?
The math says it's where it belongs.
Yeah.
So I-
Okay.
I mean, even though you know, the way that my numbers came out, it ranked lower, but at the same time, I mean, I
Yep.
think it's a collection of everybody. so it
Exactly,
makes sense.
right. Yeah, what do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think it pretty much the order of what I'm seeing here came out approximately where I
Yeah.
thought it would.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
didn't see, you know, again, you know, when you start comparing them to each other, we know we wanna pull a couple of them out of here. And so,
Yeah.
you know, it makes more, makes a lot more sense when you do that, if you pull those capital, requests out, and then you have this order you're looking at, it looks
Okay, Michelle,
pretty
what are your
appropriate.
thoughts?
No, I'm good with it, and,
Okay.
I mean, it ends up though very close to the equipment trailer, we're only off a couple on there.
Yeah. How about you, Joe? Do you think that order, do you agree with that order, land use codification and then town office remodel?
Yeah, I mean, it pretty much fits where I had it.
Okay, sounds good.
So-
I'm good with it too. All right. Let's move on down to Public Works Equipment Trailer. Have you had a chance, do you know this trailer?
No,
You're a Public Works guy.
I know, I haven't looked at it.
Uh-huh.
And
I hear it's like the original trailer that came with, you know, the package.
carries a
The
lot of
outfit.
weight, so I wouldn't be surprised that it wouldn't have some stress cracks in it
Yeah,
over time and going over the roads and that sort of thing.
yeah. I guess fortunately, these guys aren't on the interstate,
Right,
you know, but still, that's a heavy piece of equipment on there, and especially if it's going up and down on bumpy roads.
right. Which, you know, we have a few, but Durham's roads, they're pretty good compared to other towns, they really are. It's nice.
So it's really true, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely,
Didn't used to be that way.
right,
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money on that.
yes.
Yeah.
And we gotta spend
Yeah.
a little to maintain them, because that would be foolish, right, to spend all that money and then we don't
Right.
maintain that investment, so.
Yep.
The maintenance is part of their, okay, must be getting late. It's part of their budget plan, so
Yeah,
I
they,
don't see that getting gypped too much usually.
no, they're, you know, it's interesting, because, the town, there are other treatments out there that you can use that are like a third of the cost, and, one got done here.
The chip seal?
Yeah, and from what I heard, that people were not happy with that type of
Pretty
treatment.
sure that got on Stackpole Road,
They did a lot of
Yes,
that.
it did.
Did a lot of that in Powell.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
they-
that
they
was-
still do, because it's
Yeah.
it's a third of the cost, and you get a good 7 years out of it, so, you know, when I was teaching the classes and stuff, you could do a chip seal for like 32,000. Equivalent of pavement was 100,000.
Now, I gotta ask, where do you come down on crack sealing?
I love crack sealing.
Oh, okay, yeah, me, I kinda like that too.
Yeah, because that's the, by far, you get the most bang out of your buck for crack sealing. It's cheap.
Keeping out the water.
Water from getting
Yeah.
between the pavement surface and the gravel it sits on. Because
Yeah.
once that water gets down in there and it sits,
Yeah,
and heavy traffic hits it, it pounds it,
yeah.
and it just weakens it, and that's how you get your potholes to start. And
Mhm.
water is the enemy, so 80% of your road problems can be traced back to poor drainage. So if
Yeah.
you've got cracks in your road, it's.
Well-built roads,
Yeah, even
Yeah.
well-built roads,
yeah,
it'll start to deteriorate your base, so you wanna
Uh-huh.
get them sealed up.
yeah,
And, yeah, and that's all part of like a pavement management plan, you know?
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna always be using the most expensive material out there, which is hot mix asphalt,
yeah,
you're not gonna be able to keep up.
Yeah.
So, hot mix, this town last year paid $82 a ton, we got a quote this year, it's 110. All right, so you got 42 miles of a paved road.
uh-huh,
So, when you do the math, if you do 2 miles, you're on a 21-year rotation. Roads don't
Wow.
last 21 years.
yeah.
You know, you do 1 mile, because you wanna be really, now you're on a 42 mile.
Is that like a cog price? Is that a cog bid?
No, that's a
contractor.
Yeah, that's a contract, that's
Yeah.
Crooker. Gave him-
Oh, okay.
Gave him the quote. Now,
Yeah,
he'll probably get a little bit better price than that, because it's a budget number, right?
yeah,
So
yeah,
they're
yeah.
not gonna show all their cards in a budget.
Are we going out to RFP? Are we going out to?
Yeah,
bid?
so it would definitely go out to bid.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, for that. So it's those kinds of questions that you need to ask. So if you have to do, say, 3.5, 4 miles to keep up with your 42 miles, that's like a 10-year rotation. Well, if you do 1.5 miles of crack sealing, which is cheap, and then you do 1 mile of chip seal,
Uh-huh.
which is cheap, and then you do another mile of paving,
Yeah,
you've just done
that's it, you're done,
you've done it.
yeah,
And that's how pavement management works, because you're not gonna be able to do it with hot mix asphalt on all of your roads.
Yeah.
Unless you really raise a lot of money.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you for that perspective, and while we don't do the roads piece
Right.
here, but, it's great that, you guys are looking at it so carefully and trying to think creatively, given
Yeah.
those constraints.
Well, in my past life, I would stand up in
Yeah.
front of Public Works and
Uh-huh.
kind of teach them how to do pavement management plans
Yeah,
with the main local road center.
yeah, that's great,
Yeah,
that's great.
so.
Okay, excellent. So, equipment trailer, I kinda suspect it is where it is. That that's where it lives. Is that, is it?
Makes sense to me.
Yep.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, the next one is Public Works pickup. Comments, thoughts on the Public Works Director pickup? And again, Calvin came in and talked to us about this. Is this a 1-ton, 3/4 ton? I can't remember. But this is the Public Works Director pickup, and I recall it has 129,000 miles. It's got some rust in the rockers. But my understanding is it doesn't have any big issues at the moment.
Right.
I don't know when the last time was it went for an inspection, where somebody got under there, looked at things like cat corners, frame, that kind of stuff. I think we don't have that level of knowledge, but,
Well, Mike, the mechanic over there. would put it on
yeah,
the
yeah,
left.
yeah. So,
He would,
and if there was something like that, I assume Calvin would have brought it to our
right,
attention, right?
absolutely,
Yeah. Mhm.
absolutely. And he does plow with it, so that does beat it up quite a bit.
Yeah.
You know, any plow truck that's plowing snow.
Yeah,
Well, maybe we won't get that much snow, and it'll maybe last even longer. But if it's a big year of snow, I mean, it does get beat up, so.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
He is out there all the time.
It does pretty heavy duty.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So, does that, let's see how that played out in terms of the individual rankings. Just want to take a look here. So got an 8, a 5, a 7, a 6, and a 6. So 2 6s, a 7, a 5, and an 8. So, what do you guys think? Jill and Michelle, now I see, oh, and Peter. You guys ranked it the highest. How do you feel about it slipping down, to an 8? Are you concerned about that?
My thought was maybe looking at the list of everything coming up, because I
Uh-huh.
thought that was some of what he talked about, was maybe you didn't absolutely need it now, but when you see everything coming up, and if we're not reserving, so, I don't know. It's hard to sort of decide, and not seeing the trailer in the pickup myself, it's sort of hard, I guess, to kind of envision.
Yeah, and when you take out the capital funds, it lands in my ranking pretty much where it lands.
I think on this one at an 8, it's really the selectmen's decision whether it makes the warrant, probably. And it depending on where these guys end up on the budget. And, I'm sure they always want to get as much on there as they get what on there as they get the needs addressed, as many needs addressed as they can.
And that's the
That's difficult to
interesting thing
say.
too with the ticket price. The 3 items that are before it are $65,000. So even if you move it up,
Yeah.
you're almost moving it up to 3rd place. 'Cause
Yeah.
you gotta take a lot of items off the list.
Off the table. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah. And then the other thing we talked a little bit about at our last meeting was this idea that, if you don't buy it this year, and we know what that list looks like for the next 10 years, I forget which year it is, but in a year or two here, we start having a major piece of equipment every year.
Mhm.
So in my mind, if you put this at 8 and it doesn't get funded, you should be putting more money in reserve,
Right.
Right,
kind of as we were talking before.
right.
Yeah,
So.
this is a tough one this would be one of those things that if you had it in the budget, say, from last year to start saving for, it'd be one of those things that you go and buy it when you really need it versus have to go buy it next year and replace it. It's definitely a candidate for that type of
Uh-huh, yep,
look at it,
absolutely. Well, it's great, we have the select chair and the town manager here on the committee. And, so hopefully you guys can keep that in mind
Yeah.
as you move forward.
Board will have to consider that.
Yeah, exactly.
Does Mark
Exactly.
plan on having his budget together before before you guys have to make these budget decisions?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we're working on it right now as we speak. Yeah.
Because that could change the amount that you're asking for the capital funds anyways.
It's gonna look different, the budget, than what you're used to, because we're doing it, in a more, 2023 type budget way, more sophisticated. We're not commingling capital with our general fund money. The money's there. It's interesting, you'll all get, it's hard to explain without
Mhm.
having it up on a
Right.
projector or
Right.
whatever, how it's all gonna work, but he has this really nice workbook. So as you feed the operating budget, it feeds this budget summary where it shows you how
Oh,
it
yeah.
impacts his taxes. I mean,
Yeah.
it's really nice.
That's
And,
nice.
and then, so that's there, so you have your pot of money, and it's like, okay, so how much can we pull more money out of that to feed capital, and what does that do to the overall tax impact?
Yeah,
Right. Right.
So, without, you're hopeful that we're gonna be able to do this flat funding and not have it be too bad, but you just don't know until you start plugging in numbers to see how it.
Yeah.
But
It
will
comes
he have his capital forecast done, because when he
Yeah.
came and met with us, there were some pieces of the puzzle that were
Yeah,
missing.
so it was buildings that we didn't have, so we had the equipment for both public works and fire, but we didn't have the building, so we gave them, and they're really placeholders now, like if you look at the Eureka, building and the shingles, you know, you're probably looking at a new roof on that between the 5 and 10 year period. You know, this roof is okay, but the fire department, that roof over there is over 20 years old, so you might be looking at something there, and so we kind of looked at that and said, okay, well, in, you know, 2040, we're looking at a new roof, and we put in little placeholders and gave that to Mark, so we're gonna see how that plays out. I'm guessing, don't hold me to don't quote me, but I'm thinking it's gonna be right around 10 or 12,000 a year to fund buildings. And then as you do it, and you need a new roof, it's there, or you need something, it's there, just like the capital.
Yep.
So they're placeholders now, and we have to have, as a town, discussions on, you know, how much money do we wanna put into like the Eureka Center, the community center? And I'm hoping that they wanna put something, because it is the community center, right? I mean, that's downtown Durham,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, you know, we, as a town, we need to have those discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and especially, you know, if you end up expanding the staff space into this room, that building becomes more critical with regard to meetings and community space and those types of things.
Right, and we even looked at the septics fields. The septic fields around here are like 30 years old, and when you look at the life of a septic, those need to be looked at. So, you know, you put a load of money away even for those, just, but we'll see how it comes out. And again, we're just, you just sort of have to look at it and see, you know, what does this look like, and are we really gonna need it? And, I mean, these windows are old. I mean, they're wooden windows. I mean, Alan was in his office stuffing paper towels down there to keep the draft out. So, you know, do we replace those? Not anytime soon, but things get old.
Yeah, exactly.
You
And
know?
again, it goes back to that conversation, are you gonna replace the windows just to build a new building?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
That's that's why we have to have that conversation, and it's not it's a conversation over a period of time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think anybody who starts those projects in earnest, that it takes less than, 5 years to get something like that done, probably more on the order of 10.
Yeah.
Takes time. It takes time for everybody to get kind of, like someone said, get ready or understand, like for it to sink in.
Right.
Yes, we need this and we're gonna do it.
Well,
We're gonna pay
You
for
know,
it.
our friend Christine Landis that was over in New Gloucester there.
Yeah.
Went to Chelsea.
Yeah,
Well, their town office is very similar to this, and they have
Uh-huh.
a population of half of what we have here.
Yeah, what are they doing?
They're redoing their town office.
Oh, okay.
They're doing a design build and hope to have it done in a couple of years.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Excellent.
So
That's good.
It happens.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, very good. So, and then the final one is the Union Church. Who would like to talk a little bit about the Union Church? So, I think I guess I'll go. From my perspective, it's tough because I see there's need there, I see there's need. This is a historical building. And now it's my understanding that this is where the old town hall used to be for a period of time that it was town hall. And it's also right in the center of town. But, you mentioned, I thought this was a great point, or you mentioned it, Jill, that building doesn't have a lot of parking. And so it has it has the historical value, but it has some challenges, of course, and this is one of the reasons, I didn't rank it higher too, or one of the things I struggled with is, I know that there's an engineering report out there somewhere, or maybe it hasn't been delivered yet, but we don't have it, in hand. But on the other hand, Lois did come to us with a very specific request, a pretty specific request. So, but it's really hard when you rank it against these needs and also when you score it according to the criteria, which are more heavily weighted towards things like public safety and meeting important to all the community members, you know, impacting all the community members. Like, for example, something like the assessing, or something like the town office remodel, because, you know, that really does, town office remodel, I mean, everybody comes into this building, you know, pretty much and it affects everyone if we don't have staff that has a good has a reasonable work environment. Yeah, so, yeah, that's why it's down there on my list.
For me, I think it's the conversation that keeps getting circled around year after year.
Yeah,
There's not a comprehensive plan for the church,
yeah,
you know, and I understand that it's a historical building and we need to try and keep our historical buildings. But, you know, I even thought of it actually driving up 295 the other day, and there's B&M being torn down, and you know, I said to my husband, I said, when was that built? Because that's gonna be considered a historical building, and here they are, they're just tearing it down to put in apartments or something, I don't even know what's
It
wrong
says
there, college or
university.
something,
College,
yeah.
but the
You
university,
know,
yeah.
but they weren't even
Project.
told that they had to like remodel it and turn it into their school, they're allowed to tear it down. And so I think the hardest part is putting money into something when you don't know what that something is going to be in the
Yeah.
end. You know, and we're working on it, I understand we now have like a committee together to try and make that plan and stuff. But like you said, not having the engineering plan, not having the plan, it makes it really hard to rank it amongst things that you can put your hands on. You've got more of a plan. And honestly, I think that's why the town office remodel didn't rank as high for me in some regards, because it's, as I mentioned, it's a little bit of a Band-Aid, it's not the plan. So,
Yeah, and I guess, for some, the outlier, if you look at the cross, and I don't know, I mean, from my lens, it's not intentionally ranked high, it's kind of where, again, where the math based off of like, kind of how I set out to do things, how it, fleshed out. It didn't concern me, and part of my thing is that, so, the way that it's structured, we have an obligation to do something, but I also agree the fact of like having a vision of like, okay, what is this going to become? Should probably happen before we start putting money into it, but at the same time, we also, I mean, if we're gonna let it die on the vine, if you will, then we need to absolve the town from the responsibility of it, because as it stands, we have a responsibility to do something.
yeah.
And that's why, like, to me, it was okay with the ranking, because it's like, we can't ignore it. So we, you know, that's, but I also agree that it probably would be nice to have a vision of what it's going to become, what are we gonna use it for, based off of, I mean, if it's parking, and if it's just, it's gonna sit there and, you know, look good, or, you know, look historic, I should say, then so be it, but, so what do we need to do to achieve that goal? And if it's not, if it's gonna be, people aren't allowed in it because of the structural concerns, then, okay, but let's, you know, we need to address it, so.
Makes sense.
Sorry, yeah, it didn't, yeah, it certainly fell kind of where I thought it might, and, you know, again, not being able to serve a large amount of the public is definitely, definitely a big issue, and lack of a plan moving forward, but mostly the, you know, just access to it is the big criteria, although we do need to, we have the obligation to upkeep it, which I believe this number currently represents, so it's definitely something the board will have to, as a group, with the recommendations from the committee, have to look at to see what
Yeah.
happens here. But
Do we have any sense of where it's, in terms of this, stabilizing the building?
So
Whether the building's stable?
Yes, the building is safe, it's very safe, it's more
Uh-huh.
cosmetic stuff that needs to be addressed, and right now, as we're having a meeting, the Union Church Committee is having their meeting at Bill Snyder's house.
Okay,
And and I believe the goal is, from this meeting, is to come to the December 12th Select Board meeting with their recommendations on the building.
oh, interesting.
Nice.
Okay, yeah, so that could be a little bit of a moving target.
Yeah.
Right.
So we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That is interesting, an overall perspective of, I mean, I don't know how this year compares to past years, but here you are making grades and goals as far as the CIP planning committee, and yet you have a fraction of the information that is available, like, on my end, on the budget committee. You know, by the time it gets to the budget committee, there's a lot more information.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's unfortunate and interesting all at the same
And
time.
I think this represents what we know that's, I'll say, wrong with the building today. This number is an estimate based on
Right.
that. So-
No, and I'm talking,
Yeah.
that was a comment based on
On
generality,
global,
you
yeah,
know what I
general,
mean?
yeah,
It wasn't
yeah.
even based on just the Union Church, but
Yeah.
just in general, how a lot of information changes between this stage of the budget process and the budget meeting stages.
Yeah, well, you know, from my perspective, one of the things that I think is helpful and valuable is starting early. And so, you know, at least I think the idea is, you know, we flesh out a lot of those questions early on
Mhm.
in this process.
Mhm.
And then by the time it goes to the budget committee and the selectmen, a lot of the questions have been answered.
Mhm.
And the ones that haven't, then they can focus on, also on the ones that haven't. And
Right.
exactly how it fits into the budget.
But I guess what I'm saying is, when I looked at when I looked at what the CIP ordered things, I was under the assumption you were playing with the same data that
Yeah,
the
yeah,
budget
yeah.
committee's playing with, and that's not the case.
I don't think it's usually that far off,
Yeah.
but.
When do you work on budget? What's the time difference?
February,
Oh, okay.
you know,
Handful
so a
of
lot more
months.
estimates have come in, a lot more hard facts have come in that we don't have this year anyways, you know? There's a lot of things that are still in the works this year. Like I said, I don't know if that's been the case in the past, but
Okay, so, it sounds like we have a ranking. And it sounds like, we could use a motion. To refer this ranking onto the selectmen, and, you know, I don't know if anyone would like to entertain making a motion.
And that's with the suggestion to remove.
Yeah,
Reserve.
exactly, so the motion would be to remove both the Public Works Capital Fund and Fire Department Reserve from the ranking and to present those separately. And also to carry the other rankings as presented, as scored.
Yep.
I think that's it, isn't it?
Yep, I think so.
Yeah,
I'd make a motion.
okay. Okay, so we have a motion by Michelle,
I'll second it.
and we have a second by Jill. Okay, discussion? And all those in favor? Okay, yeah, all right, so that's 5-0. And I better write down this motion, otherwise,
Mm.
just looking ahead here, okay. Okay, so, I think implied, I don't know if I included it in the motion, I don't think I did. But implied in that motion is to refer these, recommendations onto the selectmen.
Mhm.
And I'll just make that as a separate motion. So if I can get us, someone to
I'll second that.
yeah, okay. All right.
Just kind of appropriate.
Discussion? All those in favor? All right. Okay, so now the last item here that I have on my list is, I know in the past, we've sometimes compiled notes in the spreadsheet of the scoring.
Mhm.
Did you get many notes this year?
Yeah, so they're all on the individual sheets at the bottom.
Okay,
So I included everyone's,
Yep.
whatever I got.
wonderful. All right, is there anything particular, now, typically what we do is we do like a one-page conveyance memo. I try to keep it short. I try to keep it short, sure. So, anyway, one-page conveyance memo. So, I'm happy to draft it. We usually don't hold another meeting to look at the memo. Usually what I do is I send it out before we send it out to the selectmen. And I say that send it out to you guys and say that, look, does anyone have any objection to this? And if you do, then we'll probably need to get together in a meeting format and discuss it. If you guys are comfortable with doing it the same way, that's fine. If you want to do it another way, that's fine with me too. I'm totally flexible.
I'm assuming if it's simple grammar or just rewording things, you don't need another meeting. If it's a suggestion of,
If it's like a typo or something like that, yeah, I do ask that you email me individually and and that we don't CC the whole group. And because, sometimes it's a slippery slope. It can devolve into, these reply all email conversations that we really shouldn't be having about
Yep.
town business outside of meetings. So, yeah, that's okay. What do you guys think?
It's fine with me.
All right.
Yeah.
With that.
So I'm gonna draft a memo. Is there anything, and I don't recall, I haven't gone over the notes carefully, but Michelle, do you think there's anything we've discussed this evening, other than I know, we've made this decision with regard to the funds, to move the reserve funds, to move those outside of the ranking, and I can certainly explain that. But is there anything else we've talked about here that you think is particularly important to put in that's not reflected in the notes?
I think I would add what we don't have on the Union Church, because
Uh-huh.
it sounds like we will have that by the time
Yeah,
it gets to the
okay.
boards. Sorry, I interrupted you, Michelle.
No, you're
I
fine.
apologize.
Yeah, that's a good one. Okay. Michelle, anything else?
Well, trying to remember from the weekend, but I think most of what was on here was discussed. I'm not sure if there's anything that wasn't included in the notes that came in, but
Uh-huh.
I think we covered the highlights from these.
Yeah. And I might say or take a liberty or two, for example, on the land use codification and just put in a few of these points that were discussed tonight.
I was just gonna say, that
Because
was the
that
one
ranks pretty
area.
high.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I feel like there were some good comments that maybe came up tonight that maybe clarified a little bit more, at least for me.
Yeah, me too. All right, very good.
Was this gonna be, I don't remember, was this gonna be presented at the next select board meeting? Or,
However you guys want it. You guys, I don't know if it's gonna be the next meeting. I guess that's the next question. When do you need it? When do you want it? Hopefully not like,
Yeah, we don't really need it, soon.
Okay.
You got a little leeway there.
that's
So,
good.
the schedule is, December 12th, we're meeting, Mark's coming in, budget committee's invited. Bill Snyder is gonna present at that meeting. So, I don't know how long that Q and A is gonna go, that's probably a pretty
Sounds
full meeting as it is.
Maybe the meeting after that?
We'll see, now that's December 26th,
Oh, okay.
so I don't know where the board stands right now on that date.
Typically, you know, we haven't finished up until,
January.
yeah, like January,
Right.
yeah.
So the plan right now is to have the budget pack ready to go to the budget committee on January 5th.
Uh-huh. Maybe we should do it on January fifth. You know, I know last,
That's a Friday though,
Yeah,
so,
but at the tenth, you're doing it the first meeting, the tenth.
yeah.
are you guys doing joint process this year or separate?
Well, I'm gonna present to the board, and then once
The
the
decision
board-
has been made.
Right.
Okay.
So once the board adopts their budget.
Okay.
Then we're gonna have so then
Yeah.
because the budget committee is really vetting the select board's budget.
Yeah,
So that's how we're gonna do that.
I'm probably gonna draft this earlier, but so do you think January tenth is like?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
I think it's the ninth, so I.
Okay.
I'm thinking Wednesday or something.
Okay, by the first January meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, sounds good. All right, guys, great. Well, I think that concludes the CIP process for this year. Other than drafting our memo with recommendations for the board and sharing them with, the selectmen and the budget committee.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, last year when we did a joint, and there will still be a joint meeting with the budget committee and the select board,
Oh, okay,
you came to the Eureka Center, I think, and kinda,
I did.
do you still want to do that?
You know, I will do whatever you and, Joe would like me to do. So,
Okay.
you know, you guys let me know what you want, and you can look at the memo, you can look at, you know, where things stand with regard to agenda and all those other
Yeah.
things, and just let me know.
So part of the
Yeah.
reason why it's nice to have budget committee members do this, and a select board member do this, I mean, they might be able to speak about it, but if the chair wants to go and do it, I mean, I would leave it up to Jill and Joe
Yep,
to.
right, and Joe, yeah.
You need me to have a memory? No?
But we can do it any way you want.
You're vice chair, right?
However you want.
Of the budget committee.
We want,
Okay, I
we
thought so.
want
You
Paul
can
to
rewatch
come
it
in
on
and do it,
YouTube.
we can. He does a nice job.
Because, you know, I can watch on YouTube at home.
Yeah. Sit by the fire.
But,
Yeah, we
we
can
can
talk
talk
about
about
that.
that, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you just let me know. Okay, very good. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
All right,
Second.
second, all right. Okay.
I'll vote yea.
Yeah.
Who doesn't wanna leave?
Right.